Today, we're going to unpack one of the most foundational stories in the Hebrew Bible, God's covenant with Abraham. We'll start by looking at the original text from Genesis, and then we'll explore how a brilliant medieval commentator, Rashi, adds incredible layers of depth to our understanding of this pivotal account.
So here's how we'll break it down. First, we'll establish the foundational text itself, the core promises, the physical sign, and the almost unbelievable nature of it all. Then, in the second part, we'll turn to Rashi's commentary to see how it opens up completely new ways of reading this ancient story.
All right, let's dive right into part 1 and look at the core promises of the covenant as they're laid out in Genesis chapter 17.
At the very heart of the covenant, you have this promise of an eternal relationship. It's this deep connection between God and a specific lineage. And from that central promise, two other fundamental commitments really branch out.
So, this three-part promise really forms the bedrock of the entire covenant. You have this unique relationship with God, you have the possession of a specific land, and the assurance of countless descendants. It's a complete package.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because this covenant isn't just a set of abstract promises. It also comes with a very significant physical obligation, something meant to serve as a permanent visible marker. And the text here is incredibly precise. There's really no room for ambiguity. It specifies exactly who has to participate, exactly when it needs to be done, and the severe penalty for failing to comply, which isn't just a minor infraction. It's framed as a direct breach of the covenant itself. Now, the continuation of this covenant is secured through what the text presents as, well, a biologically impossible promise. And that impossibility really underscores its divine origin.
Just think about it. Abraham is 99 years old, and his wife, Sarai, is 90. And it's at this incredibly advanced age that they're promised an heir, the very heir through whom this covenant will be passed down. This moment is so significant, it's also marked by a name change for Sarai.
The promise is met with what seems like, frankly, disbelief. Abraham laughs. He questions the very possibility of it happening. But despite this reaction, God reaffirms the covenant. It will be established specifically with this promised son, who is to be named Isaac.
Okay, so we've established the biblical narrative. Now we're going to shift gears and analyze how the 11th century commentator Rashi adds these incredible layers of depth and nuance. This is where we see how commentary really interacts with a foundational text.
Now, this is a fantastic example of what Rashi does. He looks at what seems like a simple name change, from Sarai to Sarah, and he sees this profound theological shift. He points out that Sarai means something like my princess, which is personal, it's limited. But Sarah, he explains, denotes a universal status, princess overall. So with this one linguistic detail, Rashi reveals a fundamental change in her role and her scope in the world. Here's where Rashi gives us this crucial psychological depth. The text uses the same Hebrew root for laughter to describe both Abraham's reaction and later Sarah's. On the surface, they're identical actions. But Rashi makes this incredibly sharp distinction. Drawing on earlier traditions, he argues that Abraham's laughter wasn't doubt at all. It was an expression of pure joy and faith. Sarah's, on the other hand, was one of cynical doubt. And this interpretation completely reframes the emotional landscape of the scene. And look at what he does here. Rashi expands the narrative by focusing on that tiny phrase, on that very day. For him, this isn't just a time marker. No, it signifies that Abraham acted in broad daylight, publicly and defiantly. It recasts a simple act of obedience as this courageous public declaration of faith, performed right in the face of potential ridicule or even opposition.
So when you step back, you realize Rashi isn't just offering random opinions. He's employing this consistent analytical toolkit. He's analyzing the grammar down to the letter, he's inferring psychological states, clarifying legal points, expanding the narrative, and, this is key, he's grounding all of his insights in the long tradition of rabbinic interpretation that came before him.
So what's the ultimate effect of all this? What happens when you read a foundational text not in isolation, but through the lens of a commentator like Rashi?
Well, commentary like Rashi's essentially acts as a guide. It makes us slow down. It forces us to question our initial assumptions about something as simple as a name, a laugh, or a turn of phrase. The biblical narrative is transformed from just a story into a starting point for a much, much deeper inquiry. And that really brings us to the core question. When we engage with these ancient commentators, how does it change the way we read these foundational texts today? What happens is we realize we aren't just reading a static, ancient document.
We are in fact joining a conversation that has spanned millennia, a conversation that is constantly uncovering new layers of meaning.